Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the mash.
Hello, good morning, welcome back. It is week 2 on the Frankenstein's Lab from Stannarts, and this week is going to be all about getting the final details in place, painting up the details, getting everything built, and then whatever lighting I'm going to do to it. Now, this is what happens when I'm left to my own devices and I can think too long about something. I automatically started thinking about lighting, and at first I was going to do a simple bulb, and for some of these things I'm still going to do a simple bulb. Like inside of this tower, it's going to be a simple flickering bulb in here. But then I looked around and I realized, I still have that extra Arduino board that I used, that I didn't need in the time machine, and that's got some lighting kind of wired into that. So, could I add some lighting? I don't want to necessarily get into the idea that this should look like a computer with a bunch of blinking lights on it, because that's kind of, I know it's lab equipment, but it's always been, turn the switch, a light comes on. I'm not a big fan of making it look like something from an Irwin Allen show with just a bunch of blinking computers, because that makes it too modern. So I am going to have a couple of blinking lights here and there, but not so much that it's a whole bank of lighting that looks like a computer. I think I've said that enough times already. I have started this morning by putting these little clear bits into this arc. I'm going to put a single red light behind that makes it look like the these bank of lights, and I want to articulate the crank here by drilling a hole through it and then putting a screw with a flanged head on the back of that, so that you can, and I'm also going to have to clean out the area behind it here, so that you can move this from right to left, which means I got to paint it a nice contrasting color so you can see it. But putting a red light behind there, I'm going to put a single light here, maybe make that one blink. Or flashing bulb. Maybe that's the difference. That's a flashing bulb as opposed to a bunch of blinking lights. So that's what I'm going to do. And I think what I need to do. Oh, and I also came up with, I think, an idea over the weekend that I think is going to have some merit to it, and it involves the Jacob's ladder here, the old thing. I have one of these LED filament segments that is very bright, and I think if I suspend it about yay high up in the course of this ladder, I'm not going to be able to make it, have the motion or anything like that, but it'll give the impression of high voltage running between those two filaments. But I think what I need to do is do what worked best for me last week, and that is to isolate things, and that is to take one piece and work on it to fruition rather than bouncing around all of these different things. I've already removed the big wall and the insulators that I'm not using, so that's kind of off the table. I want to start working my way into the week by doing this simple one with the basically this tea light, and all I'm going to do is extend the lines from the bulb of the tea light down into here, extend them up. What's going to happen is that sits here. There's that other cap with the clock face on it, or the what I call the gas pump face on it. That sits here, and that housing, that's where the I should go get that, because that's what's going to hold the guts of the tea light, and then I'm just going to extend the bulb on wires down into the inside of this. So to do that, to get ready for it, I need to go ahead and finish painting the inside of both of these, both halves of this tower, so that I can get ready to close it up. So that's a good way to ease into the week. So let's go back to the lab and see what's on the slab. Oh, that reminds me, Laura, if you're watching this, I I don't know if you guys have any plans for any supplemental kits. I don't know whether you're going to plan on adding anything more to this set and kind of build it out. But I think the next piece that would be really neat would be the gurney, would be the slab, the operating table, just something to sit right in front of these different pieces of equipment. Just the big old slab, the big gurney with the straps on it and all that kind of stuff. I think that would be a neat addition to this set. Okay, I'm back. I had to take a break to mow the front yard. Not going to mow the entire yard today because I would kill myself, but I'll mow the rest of it tomorrow. Might not have normally done that on the weekend, but this last weekend I had some friends in town, and that's always nice. Had some old friends. My friend Brian and his wife Julie came down from DC, and they spent the weekend. And we got Brian hooked up with his 3D printer and kind of gave him a 101 lesson on what all that takes, and did some figure painting, things like that. And then I had a new friend stop by, a gentleman by the name of Fritz. And Fritz, thank you again for your lovely gift. When Fritz came by, he brought me an offering, something to go into the Aztek temple, and that is a scratch-built vehicle that he made. And I'll show you that before the end of the week. But that was quite nice. It's always nice to meet nice new people. So that took up my weekend. So therefore, the yard work had to come till today. So I'll do half of it today, half of it tomorrow. But let's get back to the lab here. Now I'm getting ready to glue these two halves of this cage together. And then once they are together, then this gets sunk down into it. And there's a light on the end of it. Now, this I don't know why. This is a third type of resin. This is a very soft, squishy 3D printed resin. And because it is that, I decided I should use epoxy to put it together, not CA, because the epoxy has a bit of give to it. And I am going to need the extra time that this takes to set up to kind of position everything around and get all the clamps on it. It's not as if I put a CA in there and squished it, it might crack. So let's put some CA, let's put some epoxy in there. I've got to go get the big stacked insulator because this clips to the top of that. I almost did a boo-boo there. Oh, it's Tuesday. Good morning. How you doing? I have changed direction subtly. I have decided not to use the nano board in this, and it's only because of two things. One, I have a fear that if I did it, it would turn everything into a blinking flashing light, and that's not really the genre I'm going for here. I want lighting, certainly, but I don't want Irwin Allen lighting. I want warm lights, I want warm whites and oranges and reds. I don't want to put any blue lights or green lights or cool white lighting into this of any sort. So that's kind of my color palette. And secondly, that nano board can be used to a greater effect in another project where I do want brighter flashing and things like that, and lights in sequence. It's just a simple thing that I don't think it's tonally. It's a missed opportunity. I could use it to a better effect somewhere down the line. So I've taken that out of my contention here. I'm just going to use plain old static lighting. There may be a flashing bulb, probably more in the flickering, like the tea lights from. Well, the little tiny tea lights that flicker. That's, to me, more genre appropriate. So that's what I'm working on today, is putting some lighting in. I'm also gunking up and doing some detail painting on these. I really like the way those springs turned out on these cabinets. I think they are flashy enough on their own, he said with a wink. So I'm starting to put some of the detail in. Like I've got the innards for the vacuum tubes. Those are all going to go in next. And I am going to light a couple of these bulbs up. I decided to take these gauges, the big gauges that are here. I still need to work on some detail painting. But I've cut the fronts out of some big googly eyes to make lenses for them. And that's going to be fun. And I also, I gunked up the black because everything was looking kind of new and clean. And that's not the way it to go either. So I'm going to be gunging up some of this other stuff. I think you can see the difference between this nice clean panel and this gunked up panel. So it's subtle, but it's there. I do have the red light behind here and a warm yellow there. So that's working. Today I'm going to be installing more lighting. Oh, overnight all of this epoxy has set up. So I've taken the clamps off of this. I got to clean it up a little bit more, and then I'll be ready to put that the tea light in here. That'll be a fun thing to do this morning. Scroll down here so we can see it. These are the two what's called a Jacob ladder light. It's the thing that goes zzz, zzz, zzz. Well, I've got this little filament that I'm going to put about halfway up, so I need to solder some wire to that and run it down into this base. And this base needs to get weathered up too, but that's going to provide me the big old bright red light that's going to go between these two arcs, or make it look like an arc that's going between these two poles. And then that gets encased in this plastic glass or plastic cylinder, which goes to the top of that huge stack of insulators. So that'll be fun, and we could do all that and it'll still be nice and shiny and fun without having to do a bunch of flashy lights. Okay, here's a bit of fun. This top of the tower is coming together quite nicely. I'm just weathering up the base that it's sitting in, but I've got the bulb and I've got the wire hidden going down the strip. It's going to face out something like this, so that when, and this is only running off of a little tiny button battery from one of these tea lights. This is 3 volts. So I'm surprised by the brightness that I'm getting off of that, but you do something like that and it goes zzz. You can supply your own sound effects. I'm sorry, I'm not going to follow behind it going zzz, zzz, zzz. Okay, so I've got the beehive light, for lack of a better term, hanging in the center of this post. I took the clamps off of it this morning. I've got some cleanup to do on the paint of that. But that's what it looks like when I hang a battery off of it. Now I'm going to use the top of this thing, what I'm calling the gas pump. See, this is my clever hand holding the light there. I'm going to put my switch and my battery holder in the back of that head, but be able to control that light from there. So I just need, now that I know that this works and it's gonna work, I just need to clean everything up. I think that may be an after lunch job, because I got to go out and take care of finishing the yard from yesterday. So I'm happy that that's working. I've got that set up. I've got the light in the other stock. I've done some work on this. Oh, I've got the let's find them. I've got all the, let's get down to here. I've got all the globes in place. I've got the 3 bulbs left from, these were the ones that came with the time machine that I ended up not needing because we used our own. But there are 3 lights that blink at different rates, and I think I'm going to put them in the bulb here, and then fill in with some plain old warm whites that do blink, or that don't blink. I think that's about as much of a computer look as I want. I don't want it to be too much. And I might even take that green bulb out of the equation, because I don't think it necessarily fits with the rest of the color scheme. Okay, this little popsicle is ready. I've got the back that I've put on here is being clamped down and ready to dry, but I've got a little switch, and the little switch lights up the beehive at the bottom. And that's something I can hide on the back of the top when I sink that down into this tower. It'll sit down inside, something like that. I still need to patch the paint on that, so now that this is done, I can set it to the side and touch this up. And adding it to the other lighting that I've started to install today, I think we're doing pretty good. It's going kind of slow, but you know, slow and steady. I'll take it. Let's go ahead and get these. I've got two last resistors. I probably need to paint those first. That need to go on the bottom of this. I should start reminding myself that these things are tall and don't always show up on camera. So there's a spot right here for a couple of resistors hanging down. So I just need to get that cleaned up and ready to go. But this little mama is ready to be put into the finished lab. Okay, we're going to bring a close to the work today. We've got this tower mostly built and the paint touched up on it. Just did the last bit of construction, which was to nail down this top and put the little runners that are inside the bottom, have put those in place. Go ahead and turn this on so you can see what it looks like. There you go. And of course, the way it's constructed, I can change the battery that's up on the back of the head here. And the last thing I think I did today, was I went ahead and I put the basils in these gauges, the clear part of the googly eyes that I cut out. And I did the same thing on this one and mounted this gauge on the wall. And that's where we're going to pick it up tomorrow. Got another round of light installations in this panel. And then I can go ahead and put the test tubes over the tops of the, or the outside of those vacuum tubes, over top of the insides. And we'll be ready to start buttoning the stuff up yet. And all I'll be needing is a creature to go with it. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It is Wednesday, and as you can see by the dwindling number, one might say, of parts on the table, that means I am starting to get the sub-assemblies put together and moved off as I finish each piece one by one. Coming down to the top half of the main console, and we're going to try to put the panel that I have painted in here. Unfortunately, because it is warped, it doesn't want to lay flat. So what I'm going to do is employ a couple of big old honking clamps and clamp that thing flat so that it is in there as it should be. And to do that, I'm going to put some slow-acting 5-minute epoxy around the inside of it and pad up some clamps. Oddly enough, there's just enough room right here for this pad of the clamp, and then I can put the other one down here and take care of that stress and strain. So 2 big clamps ought to do the job. I just need to make sure that they're not going to scuff up the surface any more than I can get away with. So the last thing I saw, you may not have seen, or I may not have recorded, was I took my famous grunge coat and I put it in around the edge of the googly eye, the basil that I put on the gauge here. I think that aged it up nicely. Now, once this is in place, I can still do some final touching. Like I want to touch the edge here, just the outer rim of these gauges, to shine those up a little bit. But I can do that once it's in place. This is like the last bit of major construction on here. And then this gets this chunk off of the table. I have finished up my touch-up painting on this piece, and I'm ready to move it off of the table. And Also, I am working on the big cage back here, the big, what I started on yesterday. I want to paint the back of the clock tower that I put in yesterday that lights that light up. But since I had to fabricate this piece, I need to paint it to match everything else. So that is sitting there waiting for its final touch. That's what I'm down to. The big project for today is going to be to install the lights in these light bulbs here in these globes, and then that will go into the main box, the body of that, and then this goes in, and that's frankly about the end of it. I need to wire up the power and the switch onto this piece that I made yesterday. So by moving things off of the table, I can concentrate on what's left. You know, one of the things I like most about when I'm building a model is problem solving. Life throws at you a problem, or the build throws you a problem, and how you solve it can be just as much fun as anything else. While I was putting this thing together, I ran into a problem, an issue, a constraint, a oopsie, whatever you want to deem it. Here is what I've got. I've got this lovely little T-light switch with a switch on the bottom that lights my light. I like it. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. Unfortunately, now it sticks down a little too far. It is thicker than this is what happens when I go to put it. So you can see that big gap there. That's because this is too fat or too tall now. And it also, I was consigning myself to the fact that this is how I was going to turn it on. I was going to lift it up. I was going to have to flick it on and set it back down. That's how it works. Well, once I realized that thing was too long, the shaft of the switch is too long, I said, okay, well, I can grind that down. That's not a problem. I'll get the old Dremel out with a grinder wheel on it and just take it down. So I was prepared to do that, but then I realized, well, you know, this resin here is a lot softer to cut into than the shaft would be. Be easier to cut a hole in that than it would be to grind that off. That just makes sense. And then I thought, you know, if I don't, since I wasn't planning on gluing this down anyway, since I was going to have to take it on and off to hit the switch, if I glued this down and then I left this unglued, but with a hole in the bottom, I could just shift it like that and turn it off and on, because it's going to hit, the inside of the hole is going to hit that, and the act of turning it would capture that switch, and I'd be able to turn it off and on that way, just by a little simple twist. And then I wouldn't have to worry about picking the whole thing up, turning it off, and then I still have to pick the whole thing up to change the battery, but that's no big deal. So I'm thinking, now all I need to do is glue that down and mark out where the hole is going to need to be, so that when I shift it, it just does that and clicks and it turns it on, and then off, and then that turns it back off. So that's my neat problem solving. Sorry about that, but that was an actual phone call and not a telemarketer. So back to where we were. What I'm going to do is pop this down and just hold it over straight. I'm going to mark it with a little bit of black paint. Just a little bit of black paint on the end of the switch. Hold it over straight. And that's going to tell me where, now I've got a black spot that tells me where that switch needs to be. I'm going to enlarge that hole so that it has enough, fudge factor. But now I can drill into that and make my space to capture the switch. We'll see how well this works. Okay, so I've drilled the hole. And now when I sit this down in here, I can take the top, and by twisting it, now it hits that switch and activates it for me. Neat. Alrighty, I'm just doing a little bit of aging around the top here. Put some gunk on it, trying to dirty it up a bit. And the goal is that when it is on, all of these streaks line up. So that's off, and then you'll know to turn it that much further to be on. So now this is ready to go out into the other room and take its place with the rest of the completed bits. And we can get on to finishing up the other two towers that are left, or the big tower and the one with all the bulbs in it. Okay, you can see another piece has left the table. It has gone to meet its maker on the other table out in the other room, which means we are mostly done with it except for paint touch-ups, and I get the opportunity to clean the table off again. So now I am down to just a couple of jobs left. One of them is to grunge this up a bit and get it ready to install in the front of this cabinet. And the other thing is to install the lighting that's going to be in the bottom row of these and sit this on top of the cabinet. Now, this cabinet is going to be a central part of both of those. So I need to get that ready to receive that which I'm about to bestow upon it. And that means I got to put in some sort of access box. I need to put in a switch. I need to put in a battery holder, battery clip, because this one will be running on 9 volts as opposed to the other two chunks that are run with the little T lights. Because this has bigger bulbs and more of them, it's smarter to run that on the 9 volts. So I want to make an access panel where I can pull the 9 volt battery out of there when I need to. The thing about where I had to place that, it became a no-brainer once I realized after I opened up the front of this to make room for the front panel, that this back here is nothing but a big old sludge of poured resin. And in some cases, it's a good ½ inch thick, and I don't really want to be struggling with that when I can use the thinner area up here. So basically, that's all I did, is I've cut a box out here that I can either put in with magnets, or I can just put a little finger pull out of it, because you're not going to see the back of this. The idea is that it would be up against the wall, and since that panel is going to be in the front of it, honestly, I could leave that open if I wanted to. But this will go in like that. That goes on top of it, gets glued down. There's going to be a rat's nest of wiring coming out of here, which will come down to two wires, a positive and a negative. It'll join up with the positive and negative that's on this panel here. That all joins up, and we come around to the back, and that's where all of our wiring comes out. So I'm thinking what I'd like to do is to make this as obvious as possible. Simple. Let's see, if I took my 9 volt battery, for example, and not that one, that one's dead. Where's my good 9 volt battery? No, that is good. Let's check this for a second. I had two of them here. This is the good one. So if we do this and we set this down inside the cabinet, I've got to give it enough slack that I can pull the battery out when I need to. Maybe I can make a little ledge for it to sit on. No, that's just going to fall off and rattle around. So it needs to be at its lowest. Let's put it at the lowest point, which is there. So the battery's going to sit in there something like that. With enough, like I said, with enough slack that I can pull the battery out and change it. So that's going to have to do that. And then all I need to do at that point is to make an anchor point for these wires so that they don't get jerked back and forth when I am changing out the battery. Okay, let me think about that a bit. And then while that's going on, I can go ahead and wire up these bulbs, and I'm just going to pick a random example. I've got, thank you, Mr. Compressor. There's a yellow. I'm just using up the last of a couple of these little baggies of SM LEDs, but I'm staying in the same range. I've got yellows and orange and warm white and a red. I don't want to, like I said, I didn't want to get into the greens and blues because I just don't think that those say what I want this kit to say. So I'm going to basically get that and the kicker, and I'm just going to start gluing these bulbs. Now these are the two blinky, the big blinky bulbs, and I think I'm going to go ahead and assign those first. Okay, so I've got every bulb in here. Got them all wired up. And again, we have warm whites and a couple of oranges and a couple of yellows and a blinking red. Nothing too wildly out of scheme. And there's the rat's nest of wiring coming out, but I'm going to tuck all that in so that we're just dealing with the two main wires coming out, and I can join that with the wires that are on the front of the console. Okay, I've got the heaviest thing I could grab, which is this combo tub of epoxy sculpt, because I am setting the top console or the top cabinet and switches, or top cabinet and test tubes and lighting on the bottom cabinet, and I have some 5-minute epoxy inside there. Since there are no locator pins for any of this, I am just laying it in place and then putting a heavy weight on it to hold it. So that's the next step, and then I think I'll give all this stuff a break, and I will gunge up this panel next, and then that goes into the front. We're coming down to the wire. Alrighty, if you remember a while ago we were talking about how warped that front plate is that goes at the bottom of the main cabinet. Well, I've just taken care of that by I did a quick spot CA gluing just to hold it in place, and then I put clamps on all the four corners to hold them. I don't want to show it to you now because I'll mess up something, but basically to hold everything flat to the front. And then from the inside I went around where I could see with the syringe of 1-minute epoxy to hold that all in place from the inside. So once that has cured, we should be able to stand it back up, and you will see that the plate is in nice and flat to the front. And then we'll be down to some gunging, and we're almost done with this whole backdrop. Okay, and as we close out for the evening, I think I can show you the final cabinet. Now there's going to be some touch-up paint to do on this, but we've got the handle here that I can go from back to forth just to pose that. I've got the lights all lit and blinking. This one here is lit even though it's a lot dimmer than the other ones. I think that's more attributable to the angle that it's at. But there you go. Of course the other piece that I've got in the other room sits on top of that. But all I need to do now is to secure the switch here, fix this back plate, put a back plate in it, and attach the switch to it. Now I can kind of shove all of this in, but it looks something like that with the switch on it. And then it will be done as well. Okay, here's what the creature looks like all put together, and you'll have to tell me whether you think that's out of scale with the rest of the instruments. I could see him needing to be a little bit bigger, but that is what I've got to work with. Happy Thursday, everybody. It's the gateway to the weekend, and we're going to be finishing up today, I think. I've even started working on the creature. Now, he's coming up a bit short. I hate to say it. Frankie, you're a bit too small. I'm sorry, creature. This is not Frankenstein, this is the creature. but he's a little small. Maybe that 1/8 scale versus the 1/6 scale is going to be too big of an issue to, I thought maybe it was going to be a close enough call, but maybe not. I mean, the handles look right. If you put him next to the, machine and you put his hand on any of the handles, it looks right. But he's just not tall enough, so I don't know exactly what the deal is. So we are going to be finishing this up today. There's one last bit of mechanics that has to happen, and that is that this switch has to be mounted to a panel that I can access to change the battery, and then we will be ready to do this final bit of construction of gluing this to the top and doing our final touch-up paint. All of this kind of worked out from yesterday. I can turn it on and you can see how lovely it looks. If I can get the switch to work, there you go. See, all the lights are on. There's so much in here. I've got the red light here down, and I've got this crank where I can move it back and forth. This light is on. The bulbs are doing their bulby thing, and we're all good to go on that. We are down to the last bit on this console, and I've got the little flap in the back here to cover that up. I've got the switch installed. I'm down to attaching this to there, and that makes me sad because I really like the wood grain up here. I really like how that looks, but I've got to cover it up with that. So let me get the epoxy out for one last time, and then we'll be ready to stick that down, and we'll be doing some final assembly. Yes, I've got the casters painted. I'd give myself about an 8 on the painting of the casters, and yes, 8 would be my caster rating. Sorry about that, but you know, these are the things you think of while you are painting. Outside of, you know, sticking cobwebs on everything, if I found a really good way of making synthetic cobwebs, that would be the next thing to, you know, put between everything. But other than that, I've done everything that I know how to make this look less new and more dungeony. Not dungeness, that's a crab. Dungeony. So we're going to finish this up, and then we're going to see how much of the creature we can get done this week, and see if there's any other set dressings we can think of. I don't know, what do you think? I just saw online an idea to use fiber fill, or cotton batting as they call it, to stretch that out to make cobwebs. What do you think? It looks too regular to me. And I know if I tried to use something like hot glue, you know, just make the strings out of that, that it would end up looking too precise. I mean, not that I can do it with any amount of precision, but not random enough. Yes, and I've got the ceiling fan on, which is blowing things around. But something like, oh, I wish you would stay still. Tough to do this with one hand and holding a camera. But something like that, where you have a little bit of, I guess I would put some rubber cement or something in there, hot glue, to hold that in. Does that look right, or does that look too gimmicky? I think it looks gimmicky. Tell you what, I wish I had. I may have to dig through the old paints and see if I had. Would be a my old bottle of dust, which was a railroad color of paint that I don't think you can get anymore. But it was a yeah. This is just not cooperating at all. But a jar of dust spray that I could hit it, and that would desaturate the colors and take it down. See, anything I do is just looking too mechanical. It's too planned. We'll just have to see how the whole thing looks together. But yeah, this guy's glued down now. Well, that's typical. I went to the Michaels and wanted to see if they had any craft solution for either little accoutrements that I could put on the set, or any way to make spider webs. And I was just this too early. They don't have their Halloween stuff out yet, or the bulk of their Halloween crafts. They've got harvest pumpkins and stuff like that out, but they don't have their Halloween specific stuff out yet. And that's just typical. If I hadn't have been looking for it, it would have been out the day after the 4th of July. But because I'm looking for it, it ain't out yet. So, this is what we've got. And I was thinking about, in the course of adding all this stuff to the set, as it were. And then I'm thinking, well, that's not really the mandate here, because the mandate is to build the kit as it is presented. Now, of course, I put lighting in it. That's not unusual. But I really want to give a good idea of what you get in the kit, what you get in the set, if you buy the set from Stannarts. And if I started adding a bunch of stuff to it, that might give a false impression. So this is how all the parts you get to make this. Now, I know there's one option you can get just to make the towers, and then an option that includes the towers and the floor and the back wall. I will tell you, Laura, if you are listening, this is the perfect spot for a gurney, for the operating table. There's plenty of room for it right out front. I would also, because you guys are wonderful at your 3D printed, your clear 3D printing stuff, I would go, if you have a mind to, I'm not going to tell you your business, if you had a mind to it, to do like test tube racks and beakers and stuff like that, because you still can't find that in that scale at that quality of what you guys could do, because you could print that and then fill it with a clear liquid and coat the outside of it just like I did these lights here, and it would be crystal clear. I just think it would be right up your alley to start thinking about doing racks of, the beaker where it's got the little twisty tube that goes into the other beaker and things like that. I think you really could, you could go nuts on something like that. But the first thing I would suggest would be the big old gurney. So let's light this thing up, and we'll almost be ready to call it a done thing. Hey everybody, it's Friday. It's the last work day of the week, and it's the last work day on this particular setup from Stannarts. And I'm just working on the Mobius Frankenstein's creature to go with this set. It's not exactly into scale with this set, and that becomes more apparent when you stack them up next to this lovely equipment. But I'm just doing some finishing bits of getting everything together. It goes together very simple. It's right and left, foot, right and left leg, that kind of stuff. But I am changing out the position of his hands, because as produced, it's kind of, I know it's coming, he's coming through a doorway, but he's kind of got this stop in the name of love pose. And I'm just going to turn his hands so that they're facing, turn his wrists so that they're facing in like that. And it's a flat butt joint, so it's easy enough to do. Just sand them off flat and set it in there. Again, nothing special there. It's a flat joint, but I think it's just a lot more natural of a pose, if you can say something is natural that goes so against the laws of nature and man to reanimate the dead. But I just think that's a better, you can't do much about his arm. It's still kind of out there, but at least I can turn his hand a little bit. There. It's a little bit better. And I'll throw some dark paint on that in a minute, much after everything's had a chance to dry, and I can sand the seam of the front and the back half of his body. But that's pretty much where we're going to end it with the the laboratory, as it were. So we'll come back to that in a minute and have everything lit up, and you can see it in all of its glory. Alright, so I've done some more work on the creature here, and unfortunately he looks a bit like he's been the victim of a drive-by or fly-by bird pooping, so we're going to set him to the side, and I don't know if I'll be able to get him done with the rest of today's report, or whether that will just be fodder for another video down the line. But what I'd like to do is to light everything up and show you how it looks. Now, this is the danger of having too much time on your hands. I finished this up pretty much yesterday, with the exception of the creature. So I was left to my own devices, and I'm thinking, is there anything else I can add to this? And that's the dangerous thing. You don't want to do that, because it involves things that you should have thought of back when you had the parts open, and not now when you're trying to retrofit a subway into a major metropolitan city. So I had thought about putting a little light up here, but then that would have gotten me into all of the trouble. Since this is mostly solid, there's no real space between the front plate and this back wall of trying to channel a wire down. And then I thought about, well, I could just run the wire down the outside of this here. And then I went through all the thoughts, and I was just about ready to get out the drill and start drilling. And then I realized that if I had done that, it would have put the light approximately at the same height as the light that's in this right there, and that would have killed the whole thing to begin with. So I'm glad I didn't go through all that extra work. And then we turn the overhead lights off. Now this tower, I'm not wild about how it's sitting, because the floor itself is not very even, so I may have to prop that up so that it wants to stand straight up and down. But that's pretty much it. That's everything with all of the lights on. And probably my favorite light is down here. But you've got the winky blinkies, bright bulbs. You've got the what I call the bee's nest light in there. And then you have the light caught in mid. Maybe I need to put a better background behind everything. Give me a minute. How's that for spooky and atmospheric? A little bit better than seeing all that junked up background. But that's it with all the lights lit. I have to stand way back to get the whole thing in camera. Way back, like to here. And I know most of the pictures and references show these two towers reversed, but it's a combination of the unevenness of the floor, and this thing wants to lean. So if I found a spot on the floor where it actually is straight up and down, then I like that. Plus I like the silhouette it gives here. This I could prop up and straighten up, but it's wanting to be a little uneven, and that's because of the spot on the floor. But yeah, I really dig it. I dig how this turned out. And like I said, had I gone through all the trouble of lighting that, it would have been right next to that, and it wouldn't have been near the special thing I was hoping it would have been. So yeah, it's a little clean, it's a little tidy. There's no blood on the floor or discarded bandages or any of that kind of stuff. But again, outside of the lighting, I wanted to show what comes in the box so that you get a more accurate impression of what it is you get when you decide to put down your hard-earned money on this wonderful kit. And I'm just going to zoom in here to show you those magnificent coils and how beautifully they look after they've been painted. I'm still scratching my head to believe that was all one piece 3D printed. But cleaning that off was, more trouble than it needed to be. I should have soaked it in hot water and removed the supports that way instead of clipping them off individually. That was just begging for problems. But you know, the more you work with 3D stuff, the more experience you have with it, the more lessons you learn. And the Jacob's ladder caught in mid-spark, still think is a neat idea. And then the big insulator going to the ground, and the one bit of articulation that I left in here was the ability to move this crank to the left or to the right depending on how I feel that day. Still stick to my concept of not putting any blue or green lights in here. Keep everything on the warm side of the lighting. Not even any cool whites, all warm whites and oranges and yellows and reds. And the tea light that is making up that beehive light going on in there. Up to now, in the real world, the real prop, this spun at high speeds and it kicked off sparks every time the fin met the contact here. It made a light up, and you got all kinds of neat effects off of that. Well, since that's not motorized, I just caught it in mid-action. But the rocks look good. The wood floor looks good. I'm going to see if I can turn some of this to black and white. A little bit of footage. So let's say from about here to here would be in black and white if I can make it that way. And that's going to bring an end to the second chapter, the second half of this wonderful Stannarts Frankenstein's Lab kit. Frankenstein not included, or Frankenstein's monster not included. I'm going to finish this up. And I think what I'm going to do is finish him up, and I'm going to do the Vampy figure that I've got next week so that I can make the charming couple and maybe stand them inside here, even though they'll be out of scale with the rest of the background. Doing the Vampy figure and finishing up Frank next week, and then we'll see how much of the week that takes, and that'll take us into the next project. I mentioned earlier in the week that last weekend, a gentleman named Fritz stopped by the old Aztec temple and got the nickel tour. And I invite you, hey, if you're in Raleigh and you want to stop by the Aztec temple, clear it with me first. Send me an email. Tell me you're going to be in the area. I don't mind giving the nickel tour. That's part of why I do this. But he left me with this wonderful kit that he built himself, and I promised I would show it. And here it is. It's scratch built. The lighting is a little harsh here. But it's a lovely kit. He's got an astronaut on, and they're all color coded. He's got a blue astronaut back on the bench. He's got a yellow guy in the dome. There's a green one driving, and it comes with its own rover with tiny red guy. And rather ingenious lighting. Again, I'm going to turn this lamp off so that you can see it. But rather ingenious lighting. Little knob on the bottom that when you twist, it lights up. That's a neat way to do things. But there's the interior, and you can see the blue guy sitting on the bench. And again, there is a carrier on the back for the rover that rotates and holds the rover just like that. Now, of course, he's not sitting in there at the time, but you would detach it from there and do your missions. A rather neat little scratch build. And thank you again, Fritz, for your lovely, lovely gift. Now, as I said, you don't have to bring a gift if you want to stop by, but, you know, I don't say no. So, that's it. That's going to do it for this week. Next week we'll get into these figures. I wanted to do that Vampirella figure, but I didn't figure it would take a whole week to do. So combining it with Frankenstein's monster will really flesh out the week. See what he did there. And it kind of goes with our backdrop. So until next week, y'all be good, be safe, be smart, be good to each other, and be back next time.
No matter what you hear in there, no matter how cruelly I beg you, no matter how terribly I may scream, do not open this door or you will undo everything I've worked for. Let me out of here. Get me the hell out of here.